Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 60 Minutes in Black America. My name is Mike Haney. It's good to see all of you here early today for our special Super Bowl edition. I promise you it won't be a boring one. I usually tell you to stop, let me talk for a few minutes, a prelude while you go get your young kids and go get your grandparents and your parents so they can tune into the subject matter we have. But I'm going to tell you just the opposite today. Do not let them tune in if they're under the age of 18. I don't want it to be responsible for anyone. Dr. Carr is phenomenal. You'll get to hear Dr. Carr, and I'm sure many of you will text and email her afterwards for some direct suggestions and advice as we talk about our conversation today, which is about love and appreciation of Valentine's Day. But love should be something that occurs in intimacy and relationships. It should be something that occur every day. And if we can't take care of the relationships in our home, if we can't take care of the relationships in our bedroom, then how can we expect to improve the world and change the world in relationships with others who we may not know? So we're going to start off today and just talk about whatever comes up. I've got a nice little cigar here because I'm going to let Dr. Carr go for it and give you an education that I know only she can give. Now, one thing that didn't happen today yet, Dr. Carr gave me explicit directions to have a cigar, enjoy, and a red velvet robe, which of course I did not have, because I'm just not from that era. But I did go ahead and order it because, whatever Dr. Carr usually says is something that you usually want to do. And so as soon as that thing pops off that Amazon truck, which I'm sure will happen during the course of this podcast, I'm going to sneak away and go put it on so that I can enjoy the moment. And let me say also, you on blackusanews.com. I am so happy to be back with Donnie Glover. Donnie, I hope you're out there. Shout out, huge shout out to you. Thank you for my contract. I got a new contract. Many of you know that I've been off of Black USA News for a couple of weeks because we were in a contract dispute, but he added another zero to my salary, and now I got 5 zeros and no number in between before that, but I got 5 zeros from Donnie and a litany of work to do. But I am happy to be back with Black USA News. So let's get going. And I am so scared to hit this button, man. I tell you, man, I'm getting ready to bring Dr. Carr here. My heart is palpitating. I hope you all have chased the kids off, send them out to the playground or send them to get some ice cream or do something just like you would do in the middle of the day if you wanted to do something, close the bedroom door, whatever, get them kids out of there. But let's go ahead and bring Dr. Carr into the stream. Dr. Carr, how are you doing
Hi,
today?
everyone. How are you doing?
It is so good to see you, Dr. Carr.
It's great to see you too. And yeah, you
Thank
don't
you.
have on your robe, so I'll be looking forward to you putting it on. But you do have nice
Yeah,
flowers
well,
in the back, so that's good.
yeah, thank you very much. And as soon as the robe gets here, I'm going to put that robe on. But in the
Okay.
meanwhile, I want you to tell our viewers about you, Dr. Carr, because you describe yourself, as a corporate trainer, and a political person, somebody that works with politics and political campaigns, in addition to some of the
Mhm.
multitude of other things you do. So tell our viewers before we get into the subject matter of our conversation who Dr. Carr is.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me on the show. And for anyone who may be hesitant, I definitely encourage you to start thinking of any questions you have, especially any sexual questions that you may not be able to have the courage or the resources to ask. Then just put them in the chat. Mike will look them up, and no question is too small or no question is too salacious. We definitely want to hear that so we can help. So, yes, I'm Dr. Renee Carr. I'm a political and corporate advisor, and I'm also a trained clinical psychologist. And so, what I do is I help people solve problems by understanding how people think, how they feel, and then what actions they have. One of the problems that I find when I was in my private practice is that a couple's relationship was always manifesting in their sexual relationship. And so, based off of that research from years ago, I have a new journal coming out from my high end journal line called Journal Smarter. And this one is called Deeper Love, Hotter Sex. And what it focuses on is a 30-night challenge for couples to engage in different sexual activities and different love fire starter questions, which I give you. So, in case you're running out of ideas what to say or what to ask or what position to do in tonight to make it not so boring, then I definitely encourage you to get this because it takes all the questions out of it in a different way that's science based, that's again based off of sexual psychology and marital happiness. And I'm also a type A person. So I am positive that when you complete the 30-night challenge, even night one of the challenge, then everybody will get A's in the bedroom.
Wow, that
A's
is
and O's. How
fantastic.
about that?
That is
A's and O's.
fantastic. So a in the bedroom based on just listening to Dr. Carr,
That's
and
right.
so Dr.
That's right.
Carr is the problem solver. So if you have a problem, as Dr. Carr said, today is the day for the next 55 minutes that you have an opportunity to ask any question that you want, put in the chat. We'll pose it to Dr. Carr, and Dr. Carr will answer. Dr. Carr has always been a
Yes.
truthful person. So, Dr. Carr, in the second half of the show, we're going to get into some examples, right?
Okay.
Not that we want to
Yes.
expose everything, but we're going to get into some examples of what it is that will help couples endure 30
That's
days
right.
of marital bliss, or
That's
bliss
right.
in
Or
general. It
how to
doesn't
get it
have to be
started.
marital. How to get it started. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So, Dr. Carr, let's ask a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Much of our viewership are what I call baby boomers, or people trending up towards 60s and 70 years old. First of all, how important is sex in relationships?
Well, sex is very important, especially when it manifests in marriages, because if you've been with someone for a very long time, you just kind of get used to their body, you know, where to push, where to rub, where to do whatever. Or you may think that you do, but the other partner is too embarrassed to tell you, or it's going to lead into an argument. So it's very important because if you're not connecting sexually, then it's not going to be very satisfying. And then you won't have an emotional connection. And then you may have it where one person may want to have more sexual intimacy, but because the sex is boring or unpleasant, then they'll avoid you altogether, which then leads to less emotional attachment and less affection. And so if you have less affection, then you also have less of an emotional connection. You want to then stay gone a lot of times. And whenever you're gone a lot of times, whether it's at the cigar bar, out with your girlfriends, having girls' nights rather than couples' nights, then it makes it easier for someone to come in and try to at least take your place.
Wow, man, that's absolutely compelling, and I'm sure there is a tremendous amount of truth that our viewers would agree to. So at 60 years old, based on what
Mhm.
you just said, we get older, our estrogen levels, testosterone levels are lower than they were when we were in our earlier
Right.
years. What do the studies say about intimacy in sex for our older couples, so they realize, and our older viewers, so they realize that this is something that they can listen to and look at and do something about? What does it say about after 60s?
Well, just because you're after 60 doesn't mean you have to stop having sex. There's a very high STD rate in nursing homes because most seniors are very sexually active, but they don't have their protection and they're thinking that, oh, okay. and they're going around and sleeping around with other seniors inside the senior home. So just because you're older, it doesn't mean that erectile dysfunction is a given. It doesn't mean that vaginal dryness is a given. What it does mean is that you just might need to focus on how can you calm your mind and also stimulate your mind, because the juicier conversation you can have between your ears, the more aroused you'll be between your legs. And so it really takes more information and more time into getting to know each other on a completely different level with who your body is now. Yes, you may not be how your body was when you were 25 and it was just hormones. Now it has to be, okay, maybe we're 60, 65, 75, and now it's off of love. And also, studies do show that couples who are in love, even if they are 65 and older, they have more intense, pleasurable experiences sexually than people who might be 25, who might be able to have sex for longer periods of time, but the intensity for the emotions is not there. And whenever you have more of an emotional connection, you also are likely to have stronger orgasms.
Wow. So this statement says that the brain is the biggest sex organ, and
Mhm.
anytime you try something new, you're stimulating the brain's natural desire for novelty. Is
Yes,
that a
that's
true
right.
statement? Do you agree with that statement? And give us
Yes.
examples of the brain being that sexual organ and how it can translate from the brain to physical activity.
Okay, so let's think of, I don't want to use any political figures, but you can have a political figure who gets caught in a sex scandal, and this person is like in their 70s. And so obviously they're able to have sex. But what happens is it's the novelty of the mistress, it's the novelty of the person who is using different sexual activities and sexual positions, wearing different lingerie or not wearing anything at all, different smells, different tastes, different sensations. And so it's not just because of the person's age. You can be 5 years old and just getting the same type of dinner every day. You can get same type of chicken nuggets every day. Your body just gets used to the same thing, and therefore it's no longer exciting, nor does it taste good. And so when you have the same thing when you are actually in a relationship and then seeking to have sexual pleasure in that relationship, if it's the same thing, it's going to be boring. And so you have to put on more effort into what you do. And so what I do in the deeper love, hotter sex is helping you to have the hotter sex because you have the deeper love connections. You don't really know sometimes what questions to ask anymore. You may be afraid to have a conversation or to bring up something new. So if you can have more of an exciting conversation, it's just the talking that can bring you closer, which can then make you want to then have more of an emotional intimacy, maybe just getting closer, holding hands, watching movies together, and then that can lead to a deeper sexual connection. So it's definitely
So
true.
go ahead, Dr. Carr. Go ahead and
Yeah,
finish.
so it's definitely true, but that's how our bodies are psychologically and biologically. We are not built to just have the same thing every day. Just think if you had your favorite food, if you had your favorite food, but you had it every day for the rest of your life, that wouldn't be good anymore. So variety truly is the spice of life in and outside of the bedroom.
Wow, that's interesting you say that. So people talk about men and even women sometimes in terms of variety. That
Right.
our animalistic biological makeup is such that
Mhm.
perhaps it wasn't geared to have a monogamous relationship, and that that variety that you just spoke of is
Mhm.
something that is more inherent with men, but we have been taught that we have to conform. Like if you go to many countries around the world, you see
Right.
situations where men have more than one wife, for instance.
Right.
Can you address that for us? And is that a statement that you agree with, that, men have been taught to be monogamous in relationships? It's not natural?
Well, I definitely disagree with that. From a personal standpoint, I definitely believe in monogamy, but from a scientific standpoint, when you have a monogamous relationship, you're more likely to have partners that are emotionally, psychologically connected, and also better partners. So they then have children, and those children can then witness having a cohesive family unit. Those children then have higher self esteem, higher self confidence, and higher rates of achievement. But if you have the one person who's sprinkling seeds everywhere, there's animosity because no matter what a woman says, she may say, yeah, you can go out and do your thing, I'm okay with it, but she's really not. Because what women really love is protection and security. And people can be very, you can be the most beautiful woman in the world. And if you have a partner who is making you feel insecure because you might have Tuesday as your night, but then on the weekends he's with Susie Q or Shaquisha, then you're going to be very insecure as a woman. And so then you're going to have more animosity, more arguments, more fighting, and that's not going to lead to a happy home. And so, from an evolutionary standpoint, it's not the best, except for if we were in the apocalypse, we might have to spread some seeds in the beginning, but eventually it will be healthier for groups of people to then go back to the nuclear family systems.
So communications is crucial here. And how do you get
Mhm.
families, how do you get couples to communicate? Because, as you mentioned, we're in there for a while, we've been together for a while, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden, things become mundane, the same. Do
Right,
we come to experts like you? Do we read
right,
books? What do we do? Most seem to go in a different direction that doesn't promote that monogamy that you're talking about.
right.
That's real.
Yeah, it is real because it's easier. It's easier to go find and do something new with someone else rather than to make what you have work. And it's also easier because the older a man gets, then the more likely he's going to be stuck in his ways and to want more and more peace. And so the more peace he has, if it means that I have to just be here and be your husband and go someplace else and be sexually satisfied, then he'll do that to keep his own sense of peace rather than even to get a divorce or to just leave and go be with the mistress. It's easier, as that song would say, cheaper to keep her. That's also psychologically as well. So if it's as a man is getting older, if it's easier and more peaceful to just stay, but then to just say, okay, well, I guess this is just going to just be it for us, then it's easier to do that than to be courageous enough to want to have a conversation and try something new. And people get stuck in ruts all the time, including females. It's like, well, let me just go ahead and do this. And what I find is that people are quick to settle rather than to want to get what they really, really want. And a lot of times it's because marriages and relationships have so much baggage or unspoken words or unhealed wounds that it's easier to just, well, we're okay. At least we're not arguing, we're not fighting, we're too old to be going and doing all that. I'm too old to start over, you're too old to start over. So at least this is better than what we had. But I disagree because you're still meant to have an abundant happiness through the end and the whole lifetime of that relationship, not just getting along.
Would it be helpful that at every so often intervals that relationships have a mental wellness checkup? Would you
Oh,
recommend that
definitely.
once a year, once every 6 months, and starting at the age of 40 or 50, like men have to do with prostate
Hmm.
checkups, that
Hmm.
a couple should do that? And where do they go? Where do they turn to? Is this something that
Well, I think
insurance pays for?
even if you were to do just a weekly date night, it's pandemic, so you may only be able to afford the
Date
dollar
night.
meal on the floor, but it's those date nights that are weekly that can just help keep the fire going. If you wait until 6 months or a year, there's a whole bunch of resentment that's there. And then when you then go and try to have a wild night of passion, then you have to do so much undoing to just get into a state of mental relaxation before your body can even relax and enjoy.
Wow. So Doc, let's talk for a minute about leveraging sex, leveraging
Okay.
intimacy, meaning that, you're in a relationship where the significant other, one or the other, is totally only a once on Sunday, the fourth Sunday of the month, or hey, you
Right.
didn't do this for me, and I'm not going to give you that. And you have a bunch of resentments and issues.
Hmm.
So what comes about when you are in a relationship in which the other person is leveraging sex and using it
Yeah.
against you, and denying? What do you do?
If they're doling it out like that, it's because it's not enjoyable for them. Because you can be in a very abusive, very unhealthy situation, but if the sex was pleasurable if the orgasms were intense and consistent, they could hate you and still be like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and do this and then get back to not talking to each other. So if someone's doling it out, it's because they're not enjoying it. The
Wow.
whole
So
benefit,
you,
the whole psychological benefit of the orgasm is it also releases oxytocin and a lot of endorphins, and so that's a natural instinctual reward system internally from our hormones and our endocrine system, and it's built that way so that that explosion of pleasure and emotions that comes along with it helps to tighten the connection. And so when it's not that enjoyable, there's also not that much emotional attachment, and therefore it's easy to be like, let me just do my job once a month, let me just go with here and do this for him or do this for her, but I really want to just get this over with. So if they're doing that, that's because they're really not enjoying it. And it could be not an issue of sexual prowess. It could be because of mistrust. It could be the other person's part. So say, for example, for women, of course, it's easier for a man to have an erection than it would be for a woman's vagina to be lubricated. But the lubrication comes from emotional arousal. And so she's thinking about the dishes, and she's thinking about the kids, and she's wondering, oh, he has on new underwear today, or oh, this is a new position he's putting me in. Her mind is completely someplace else and detached from her body. And so it may not even be that the man is doing anything wrong, it might be her own insecurity. But that insecurity, whether it's real or imagined, on one partner's side or both partners' sides, if they are rationing out sex, it's because they are not enjoying it for whatever reason. And usually it's because of a sense of mistrust or just biological mechanics not really working that well.
well, let's talk about orgasms for a minute. You
Hmm.
say we're assuming, based on
Hmm.
what you just said, that it takes two to make that happen. Is that a fact?
Well, no, you could have obviously oral sex. And so you mean just one person just sitting in a room by themselves having an orgasm, or?
So I talked to a couple of people in preparation of this. Bob told
Mhm.
me in 1970s that he read a magazine article about a girl's best friend, and the girl's best friend was a vibrator.
Oh,
So
yeah.
is so are there other ways for that orgasm, for that release? You say that the importance of an orgasm is because it releases a lot of things, in the
Hmm.
body, chemical
Hmm.
wise. But is it necessary to have that with another person, or is it healthier
Um,
to have with another person? So let's talk about orgasm in general, and how that works.
Okay, so if Bob has a new girlfriend or a wife, the new thing is called the rose. And so that's something that's supposed to have an instant orgasm. It actually looks like a rose. And then it has the different layers of the machine. And there's a little tiny hole, like in the middle where the clitoris would go. And so basically, it's massaging like all around the vagina and then like little suctions on the clitoris. And so
So that's what
supposedly,
Bob should have gave her in the 21st
that's,
century.
yeah, well,
He's using the
that just came out, I think, like,
1970s tool.
yeah, well, now it came out like last year or something. So, but that's the new thing instead of the prelude. That's the new thing.
Hey, so
But
Bob, do you hear that? Bob, do you hear that? If you're getting
tell
your
her
wife
she
a
could,
Valentine's Day gift, get her Dr. Renee, you said the rose?
the rose, yes, and it's on
The rose.
Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Get her a rose, and that's a newer version, Bob, than what you got, the prelude. But go ahead,
Right,
Dr. Carr. Let's talk about that self-organized organisms, or the fact that couples look toward alternatives when they can't work
right.
together in unity to make that happen, that they look for other means or outside of that relationship.
Right. Well, I'm definitely a big believer in romance and love, marriage, and happily ever after. And so, if you are, say, for example, your partner may have erectile dysfunction, or the woman may have an issue called vaginismus, where the vagina is so small because of trauma that it's hard for anything to get in there. And so, you might have to use like mechanical and medical tools for it to actually be able to open up wide enough or wet enough for a penis to enter. So I would suggest those for situations where it's medically necessary. But what I prefer is if you are going to use a tool, you're using it together and not to replace. because that's just putting a band-aid on it. You go and get the rose, you go and get the vibrator, and if you're just doing that just by yourself, it's because you know that your husband or your partner is not pleasing you. But if you were to be able to have a conversation, that would be much more enjoyable than just, something with batteries in it. So,
Wow.
and
So
I do encourage the mutual masturbation. So, say for example, you all are together, you're doing like, like you're together, like in the moment, and maybe you're just doing it as a show, like to arouse each other. Then I think that you're in the room, you're in there together, and I think that's a way to actually do it and still use the tools, enjoy the pleasure, teaching the other person what to do and where to touch, how much pressure, how much not to put on there, as a way of a teaching method rather than a replacement method.
wow. Dr. Carr, this is a very relaxed, comfortable conversation because you put things so astutely and tastefully. And
Mm-hmm.
it's unfortunate that years and years we've looked at sex as
Mm-hmm.
some sort of dark closet secret, afraid to talk
Right,
about it openly so that we can improve relationships.
right.
And so why is that? Why is it that, particularly in our
Mm-hmm.
community, sex is this dark, secret relationships? And oh, by the way, Joe and Jill down the street just had 10 kids. So something's going
Mm-hmm.
on there. But yet, you know
Right,
what I'm saying? Something's going on. Ain't
right.
like we're not doing things,
Yeah.
but when it comes to fixing relationships and people stepping outside of relationships or not
Mm-hmm.
dealing with relationships, we refuse to have these very hard conversations, which it's really not. You're just breaking it down and telling us what it is that we could do.
Right,
But why is that
right.
that we're afraid to have
Yeah,
these conversations?
and I think it's because um, you know, we evolve in society as far as what's allowed and what's not allowed. And then a lot of times women were not able to even enjoy sex. It was supposed to be just a responsibility. And so just the whole sexual evolution or revolution, can come about. I did a seminar, I think it was a week and a half ago, about can good girls have orgasms? And this brings to mind what you're talking about. Sometimes you're taught just don't do it, just don't have sex, just don't do it, wait till you get married. And then you get married and you don't know what to do. And so that's one reason why I really felt strongly about, what should I even do this, this journal, the Deeper Love Hotter Sex journal, because I didn't want it to be where it's just salacious, like it's like soft porn, but more so where we're actually telling you that it's okay. Not only is it okay, but it's also your marital right to be able to have orgasms every day with your partner if you know how to do it right. And so the reason why it's called a challenge for 30 nights is because if you have the psychology of, oh, this is a dare, or oh, Dr. Renee is telling us to do this, we want to win the challenge, it helps you to kind of like, release your inhibitions, and it allows you to be able to kind of like go with the flow rather than having to try to be like a prude and I can't do this and I can't do that. Because there are a lot of women who have been married with their partners for maybe like 30 and 40 years, who really, really, really want to be able to enjoy sex, but they're afraid of being seen by their husband as a floozy, or why do you want to do this? Or they just don't have that sexual confidence. So I think it really comes from not being able to talk about, okay, and then when you do get married, this is how you can enjoy it. And then when you do get married, this is why it's so enjoyable and why you should wait and save it for when you do have sex, rather than just saying, just don't do it, it's bad. And then when you do get into the situation, you're like, okay, let me just sit here and let him do whatever he's going to do because I'm not supposed to be enjoying this. I'm not supposed to be moving around. And so a lot of times men are given the pass because men are more able to have less, the repercussions of having babies from being pregnant from the sex. So it's not as much of a burden on them to not enjoy their sexuality. But when it comes to women, a lot of wives are not able to enjoy or to please their husbands because they were never taught on how to enjoy themselves in that sexual situation.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Carr. We're at the halfway point. Boy, does time fly
Yeah,
when
that was
you're
really fast.
into
And we don't
a
have any
intense
questions.
conversation. Well, man, and that's part of the reason we asked the question,
Yeah.
how many people are afraid to ask questions of this nature.
Yes.
How many people are afraid to have their name associated with asking questions of intimacy?
Oh,
That's
that's
why I
true.
have left. That's why I have left Dr. Carr, Dr. Renee Carr, the problem solver, with your web
Yes.
address and
Problem
your
solved.
email address so that
Hmm.
people can contact you, because it's a tremendous problem in our community. I believe when you talk about relationships and the
Hmm.
breakdown of relationships, the breakdown of the family, the structure of men and women. And we know the importance of having a good, intimate relationship as a foundation where we're pulling and tugging and hugging 30 years
Hmm.
later because there's a caring concern. And where
Hmm.
do the kids see it? What do the kids see it? So, it's
Right.
important that we find a release and at
Right.
least find a place to get our information and get our
Hmm.
fixes. And that's why we
Hmm.
got you, Dr. Carr. And so here
Right.
we are at the halfway point, and I want to talk about, before we get into the 30-day challenge, we get into some specificity in terms
Hmm.
of good sexual health, and we look
Hmm.
at some health related issues with the
Yes.
inability to have sex as well, because how do you overcome that? But let me talk about some of the shows in the Black USA News Network. I tell you, Mr. Glover, who I know you know as well, has done a phenomenal job
Yes,
with this.
Donnie.
And as I said, Donnie, he renewed my contract. I feel real good. I'm energized that I'm back here. And he has grown this Black USA News Network. He's on every Monday through Friday
Hmm.
with special edition from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then following him is William Honeyblue, who is the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. On Monday evenings, we got a host of shows on Mondays. Frontline News with Yolanda, Donna, and Jason. Shared Spaces with Quita, Chap, and Dason at 7 o'clock. Go on the Black USA News page to see these if I'm running to them too fast. But I want to acknowledge these people who have put the time in to do good quality work. And Shared Spaces have been on for quite a period of time. And then we have a new program on the Rover Report. And I think Mr. Washington is out of Alabama or somewhere down south. He's on at 8 o'clock. And then on Tuesday, the impressionable, wonderful Marsha Jews with We Keep It Moving. Marsha's wonderful, wonderful host, and she's on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. And then on 7 o'clock on Wednesdays, we have a good friend of mine, Carla Nelson Chambers, with
Oh,
Conference
yeah.
Room Conversations, talking about issues in business with women across America and comparing notes as we need to, even with this conversation we're having today. And on Thursday, one of our more popular shows, Black Business Roundtable, with Doug and Dr. Ashley out in Oakland, California. And we're staying out in Oakland on Fridays at 7 with Kamal Hubbard, who's teaching us everything we want to know about the 21st century way to spend money and meta and all that stuff that I'm trying to comprehend and understand, and how I can buy a car with cryptocurrency and all that kind of stuff. So Kamal's on every Friday at 7, and at 10 o'clock in New York, 10:15 rather, in New York, the Blackout Live with Tasmir. And Tasmir is kind of like our young millennium that's running and helping us understand things and technology. Check her show out on Saturdays. And then on Saturdays at 6 rather, Joey Noble from Miami, Florida. Joey is new. I think his first show was last Saturday, and I caught a bit of it, or yesterday. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal show. Joey, shout out to you. And then on Sundays, man, I tell you, this guy's coming like a roaring lion, man. I've looked at some of his numbers, unbelievable, out of Prince George's County. Politics over people with Martin Mitchell. He's doing an awesome job. He's been on, I think this is his second week, had a phenomenal guest on there today, and we're looking forward to him. And then, me, on Sundays at 6 o'clock, except for today, because it's Super Bowl and because it's a special presentation with you, Dr. Carr, a phenomenal individual. And next
Thank you.
Sunday at 6 o'clock, we're having a guy named Mike Rosenbaum, former gubernatorial candidate. We're going to talk about bias and poverty, and why
Mm.
bias and poverty is part of the economic profile for America. So that's what we've got happening on Black USA News. We're talking to Dr. Carr today in this special presentation, Super Bowl presentation about looking for love in all the wrong places. So, Dr. Carr, we were talking about, intimacy and the need to nurture and communicate relationships. And then you said, hey, what better way to do that than to spend time and let me teach you about how to do 30 consecutive days of that. So let's talk about that for the next 27 minutes. And I'm going to light my cigar up because you told me to do so. I've looked out the door.
Yes.
I'm going to go see if my robe is here so I can slip that
Okay. I
on.
have mine
And I'm
on.
going and I'm going to let you go. Yeah, that's a beautiful robe, Dr. Carr. So I'm going to let you
Thank
go,
you.
Dr. Carr. Go do your thing.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned before you gave the overview about some of the physical complications that may interfere with being able to even have sex, even able to have an erection, or even being able to have any weight pressure on your pelvis, maybe. But it is important to know that it is not like a death sentence, and not everyone, you don't have to just assume that's going to happen to everyone. And if you do need to have medicine or pumps or anything else, then you could definitely be able to use those to your advantage. But if you look at it from the biological benefits of a woman having an orgasm, if a woman has an orgasm at least once, so at least once a year, I'm talking about at least once a week, then what that does is that helps to give her a lower probability of having cervical or uterine cancer. And the reason for that is, when you're having the orgasm, then, whether it's a vaginal or a clitoral orgasm, you're still having like juices that are kind of like coming out. And so that kind of like helps to not only clean out the vagina, but also kind of like helps to kind of like get a little bit of a muscle working there. And so if you can at least work with your partner to have at least one a week, that'll make your vagina and uterus a lot healthier and less risk for cancer. So that's one biological benefit. There's not that many studies showing the same thing for men, but what it does do is it does help increase their heart rate and is really good cardio for them. So if you are depending on like which positions you want to work in, it's also good for a lot of older people get a little thing in their back where you wake up, your back is kind of hurting. So one way to do that is I try to just show you with my hands. So imagine this is the person. So I'll act like this is the lady right here, and this is the man laying down. So if the lady is here, and then she's on top going on like that, that's going to be a good thing to not only increase make your abs tighter, but also increases your back muscles. And the same thing if the man is doing it. So then, of course, he's just going in and out. That's not really a lot. So if he were to be able to have it where he's more in the missionary position and actually having to do it that way, that helps to increase his back. If you don't have enough endurance to be able to do it in that position, the man or the woman like that, sitting on top, then there's an exercise that you could do called planks. That's when you're like on your elbows and you're holding your feet. So you're holding your body like this and just try to do 10 minutes or 10 seconds at a time, building up to 10 minutes. And that can build up that whole band of lower back muscles that will not only help increase your body from having less back pains, it will increase your ability and stamina to be able to have a more enjoyable session. So those are just a
So,
few
Dr.
things
Carr, what you're saying is that even at the age of 60, 65, 70, when we
80.
experience many of these, that this does not prevent us. And it's almost like going to the gym, it sounds like working out, in
Exactly.
addition to helping your sex partner
Right.
have, and particularly in the case of women, as you mentioned, the biological benefit of that. So
Hmm.
putting a spin, not a spin, but putting to it
In
something that we
addition.
may not have known.
Hmm. Another thing is when you have, so if you do like, if you've ever been to like a strip club or women, if you take in strip dancing classes, you have a thing called the butterfly. So it's like, you're opening your legs like that. So the more you're able to open your legs and having it more out, then that also helps to increase your flexibility so that if you're having less hip problems, then being able to just have it stretched out more and more, then that's another benefit. So think of it as, okay, this is like a multi benefit session here, an emotional connection, helping to prevent cancer, helping to get my back stronger so I have less back pain. And if I'm laying down and like in the missionary position, if my legs are open like that, it's also going to make me less vulnerable to having hip problems because you'll have more flexibility in there. So those are a few things that you can do. But a lot of the questions that I've had before, like from the last workshop, is sometimes women may not feel comfortable like with oral sex or performing it on their partner. So that's one thing you could think about if you are still trying to build your body up. Then obviously I can't show you on this show, but there's
Have you
certain
heard the
ways.
myth? Have you heard the myth about that as it pertains to cultures and races in terms of oral sex, one versus the other? Have you ever heard of that? That one prefers and one doesn't prefer, like with black women, they don't, and I know it's a generic, and we don't want to associate generic statements. Black women don't give oral sex or things of that nature. Have you heard of
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, they'll say that a lot of white men will prefer to do oral sex, or that it might be easier for a white woman to do that. And I think it's more so, there's always some truth to a lot of different rumors, but I think it would be because of the mentality a while ago about a black woman being on her knees and performing fellatio. And so sometimes if you don't have that strong marital connection, I'm a political advisor, so obviously there's a lot of systemic oppression that happens. And when the black man is being oppressed and outbid or excluded from opportunities and
Ah,
wealth, then he may have more of an oppressive approach in his marriage. And so a black woman is like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this too. Like you're being mean to me, and now I'm feeling even more belittled because the man is trying to get over the psyche of having been oppressed in the workplace and wants to come home and be the king, but he's ruling more like a dictator rather than a king who actually loves his people. And so the black woman who's also strong is like, okay, I'm not gonna be up there, sucking your dick if you are gonna be mean to me. And so it's more like, okay, well, how can we have this connection of I want to treat you like a king. I want to be able to please you in all ways at all times. But what I need as a wife is to know that you got me, you love me, you're going to take care of me, and not that you're going to abuse or then pass down your oppression onto me. And that doesn't happen a lot of times in white relationships because they don't have those systemic oppressions where the man is trying to overcompensate when he gets into his relationship because he's like, I'm here for this, you're here for this, let's just do what we do. And so there's a lot of cultural systemic issues that go along that unfortunately manifest in the bedroom at times in black relationships.
so you
But
were you were about to talk about that in terms of the oral sex and how that all plays out, and so can you get into that a bit of a deeper dive, because that seems to be something that's prominent on a lot of people's minds. Is
right, you
it's
mean how to do it,
yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah, so I
how,
think that yeah, so I think one way is obviously, be the easiest way to start is to have the man on the chair, or if you have, or on the couch, if you have steps, depending on how, good your back is. It's always easier to have the hips up, either on the couch or on the steps, and then the other person a little bit below. So that's definitely great if you do have issues with your knees. Then if you can do it on the steps, and you're at the lower angle, then what happens is it makes it where it's a lot easier to get to, the treasure point. And so that's one way, just positioning your body where you're not so
treasure point? What does that mean? I mean, maybe other people know what a treasure. What are you talking about? Explain
so
that to me.
either the clitoris or just the penis in and of itself. It makes it
Oh, okay.
easier. Yes, it just makes it easier when you're either on the steps and you can, you're more able to angle your neck there, or able to hold your body there without having to try to like arch your neck and your body in a different way. So try to like have the other person a little bit above, but still laying back, so that way you can still like see everything. So that would be one thing if you're kind of like starting out, but it makes it easier to do from the just the layout of the house or the room. And another thing is that sometimes women don't understand exactly like where on the penis. So, So say for example, this would be, obviously his penis, and there's always like the little vein, that's there. And sometimes a lot of women think that, oh, let me just see if I could teabag or, just tease the scrotum. But it's just like the scrotum actually in the human development is what happens when you have the labia for the woman's vagina. So if you think about as a woman, if just someone just sucking on your labia doesn't really give you any pleasure, it's the same thing for a man. So just that those labia, when it's a little tiny fetus, will either grow into like the vagina, lips, or it'll grow into the scrotum. And so don't focus on issues that it's not going to bring you pleasure, because biologically it's the same thing for the other gender, male or female. And so
So
focusing more.
how does someone, Dr. Carr, and I don't mean to interrupt you from that, to the point that you just mentioned, what does the conversation look like when it doesn't bring pleasure? And how do you do that? Do you snatch ahead, or you give them a book to read? I mean, so how do you, and when is a good time so that someone's ego isn't busted when you tell them that they haven't done something the right way to you? I mean, how do
Yeah.
you work through that?
Yeah, sometimes it can cause a lot more confusion and frustration and insecurity and damage. And so that's why I do try to make sure that it's explained in detail with several oral sex challenges inside the deeper love, the hotter sex, because sometimes if it's just up to you two, there might be so much baggage, you may not know what to say or how to introduce that topic. But what I would say is have a challenge where I call it like oral exams. And so the oral exam meaning I'm good. This is going to be my night. I'm going to show you, like teaching you where, how much pressure, how long. If you look at a clock, usually some women, think of this as a clock, and you have the vagina here. Not everyone wants you to just focus on just the clitoris. It might be maybe at 9 o'clock or at 12 o'clock or 11, was it 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So you have to figure out what you like for that woman, not just doing what you think as a man she would like, or what you think your last girlfriend or your last wife like. So I would just say have an oral exam where we are going to take this challenge from Dr. Renee, and this is going to be my night. I'm going to show you exactly where, how much, and how long. And then I'm teaching you what I like, and I'm giving you permission to practice on me. And that it's a no judgment zone. And then the next night it could be someone else, depending on your stamina. You could do both lessons in one night, but I'd rather for you to kind of like draw it out and have like the pleasure and just the idea of what's going to happen in your mind for at least another 24 hours to the next person.
So are you saying, Dr. Carr, that for that 30-day challenge, because I think you've covered 2 nights of 30 nights, and now there's 28 nights left, right? So you talked
Mhm.
about that exploration for either or,
Right.
unless they have the stamina to do it one night. But I think if they're going to take a 30-day challenge, they may want
Right.
to spread it out. But what does that first week look like? It sounds
Okay.
like the first night or two, there's some pre-work that needs to
Mhm.
happen before it even begins to engage. Is that
Right. So for
accurate?
every night, you have your fire starter questions. And so you have questions that you might be like so say for example, one might be I don't remember all the pages, but one might be, if we had to build a business together, creating legacy and wealth for our family, what would be the business? What would you do? What would I do? So that might be one. And then you might go into like answering those different questions, like just getting a conversation started. If you're the CEO, what would you do? Or it might be something going back to your, romance days. And it might be 5 questions on that one night. What did you remember about the first time we met? What do you remember about the first time that we kissed or held hands? Like it's a way to have a conversation. There's at least over 100 fire starter conversations that are spread throughout every night for the whole month. So you have your every night has your fire starter conversation to get the conversation going, whether it's over dinner. There's also very detailed plans about if you're going to go away, how to have a escapade, all the different things you're supposed to be bringing with you, how to use those different objects or different items. And then you have the other part of that same night, which is the actual sex challenge part, which says, touch your wife here, do this to your husband, or be in this particular position. So it's very detailed as far as what and how to do. For example, on the first night, one of the things is you're making love and you're standing up, and the one person is blindfolded. So it kind of like eases you into more and more and more graphic and more exploration to build up your own sexual confidence and your own sexual comfort. So that way you're like, okay, this is kind of nice. And it's built in a way to make sure that each person's body is enjoying the pleasure with the mental freedom to just do what I say and not have to worry about what are we going to do today. Well, just follow the book. It should tell you what position to do or where to rub. So, it even also helps the woman to explore, like, sometimes women, you might be in a particular position. And so I think it might be night 10 or something, but it might even show like if you're in one position, so it's like, bare back is the position. It's like backwards, bare back. So this is the man lying here, and this is the woman. So this is the woman's face. This is the man's pelvic bone. So usually you might, have sex like this, where it's in a missionary position. But this time what you're going to do is you're turning backwards like this. So this means that the vagina is kind of like facing away from him, but still the penis is still inserted. And in addition to her moving back and forth, there's also instruction on for what the woman to also do to self-stimulate as far as her breasts, her nipples, or even her, clitoris, so that she can be aware of and have the opportunity to explore what she enjoys by having a doctor kind of like tell her what to do and giving that freedom to do the exploration, which of course the husband will enjoy, she'll enjoy, because then you have more permission to explore each other in ways that you may not have done if you weren't forced to do the challenge, if you didn't want to win. Where did you go? Oh, I hope maybe he went to get his robe. Well, I guess he left, you guys. I guess it was really good. But those are just one of the things that you can do. I also give different directions on different, as far as like, not just so much erotica where it's blindfolds and ticklers and handkerchiefs. Oh, good, you got
Hey, I'm
it.
back. So, we only got 9 minutes left. The
Nine
thing is too
minutes.
damn short, but it's okay. And I said, well,
Okay, well,
Dr.
good. At least
Carr
you
can
follow
carry this
directions.
conversation, man. And that's what you asked me to do. That was my role.
Yes.
But, I
And
was
that's a good
listening to
time.
you.
Just being able
I was
to
listening
just,
to you intently, and you told me to have a cigar. So I got this totally out of my comfort zone. But I think that's what we were communicating,
yes.
communicating out of our comfort zone, going out of our comfort zone to talk, have conversations, and try things that maybe another partner may enjoy trying. But the key to it is communications. And I was
That's right.
listening to you give us ways to communicate. So go ahead, Dr. Carr. Tell us, I asked you before about that first week, because every
Hmm.
time something gets off to a good start, and man, I
Right.
really want to take this robe off, Dr. Carr, but I'm going to hang in there.
No, keep
I'm
it
gonna
on. You only
hang. I'm
have
gonna
like eight
hang.
minutes left.
This is, next week I'm talking to a top politician. This week I'm in a red velvet robe that's a little too short, but it's all good. It's all
Yes,
good.
don't worry. I'm the
But
problem
let's talk.
solver. I'm
So I
solving
can come
problems
see
in
you then,
Congress
right?
and the bedroom.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, you go ahead and talk about that first week in terms of how our viewers can get off to a great start, particularly given tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Forget the
Yes,
flowers, forget the candy. What do they
right.
do? Do they
Well,
order
let
from
me give you.
Amazon?
Yeah, so let me. I mean, obviously, you could always buy something, but when it comes to the whole romance of the holiday, whether it's tomorrow or next month, it's for the woman. It's more of you put in the effort to do something special to me. And if you do send flowers, then make sure you send them where there's other people who can observe her getting the flowers. Don't send the flowers at home if no one else is going to be there. You wasted your
Send
$100.
them to work.
So
Send them to
yeah,
work, right? Send them to a
yeah.
job.
Send them to work. Send them to a place where other people will
Take them
see her.
yourself, right?
Yes. Oh, that would even better. Save the delivery fees. Yeah, and it helps her to feel very
That
special and
sounds
very
like a
clean
cheap
for the
guy
gift.
like me.
So that would be one thing. If you want to be a little bit, more adventurous, I would encourage you tonight. So maybe like at midnight, tell your partner, and you only say this. I'm not going to tell you why, but only drink sweet drinks tomorrow. Don't have anything salty and nothing sour. And then, of course, when you get home, then usually what happens is whenever you have seminal fluid or vaginal fluid, if you do have orgasm when you're tasting the other person, it's more likely to taste sweet. And that could be your new code word from now on.
Okay. Sorry, Dr. Carr. Could you repeat that instruction? What did you say? Go ahead and repeat that instruction.
So depending on how
I'm like
adventurous.
80 years old. I never heard that before. What
Oh,
did you
really?
say?
Okay. So yeah.
What did you say?
Well, these are the things that you learn with me. Problem solved. So what happens is that a lot of times women may not want to have oral sex with a man having an orgasm in her mouth because of the way that it tastes, and it often tastes based off of whatever the man ate that day. So if you tell your partner to just have sweet things, nothing salty and nothing sour for all of tomorrow, then you can have the reward of that. So that way, whenever the person does like ejaculate on your face or in your mouth, it has more of a sweet taste to it. And the same thing for the woman's vagina. If you tell her, eat sweet stuff or eat pineapple, not a lot of caffeine and coffees, eat things that are more sweet, nothing sour, nothing acidic, then that will also be the same thing, that her vagina will have more of a sweet smell and also taste a little bit sweeter as well. And so that's just something that's very simple you could do. If you may not have gone out and bought anything yet, but you can start the party tonight by saying at midnight, this is what I want you to do. Another thing that you can do is, without spending any money, tell her about or him about what to eat and what to drink the next day, tomorrow. And then also send that person a very erotic song, but maybe have the words typed out, which you could easily do at google.com, and have the lyrics typed out. And then you can just say in the note, this is what I'm going to do to you tonight. And then just have, all the things that are on there, and just make sure you deliver on that. And then if she is a mother, or if he is working 2 and 3 different jobs, make it where it's without spending a dime. Everything is just kind of like taken care of, and you all can enjoy your hour or two together without it being let's just get this over with and like go back to washing the dishes and taking care of the kids. Like, make this your time. And that's not spending any money other than whatever you're going to eat for that day. So that's a very economical one. It's also one of the suggestions that are in there as well.
Wow. Dr. Carr, we're down to the last 2.5 minutes, man. I tell you, we could talk another hour, but I'm sure people want to go watch the Super Bowl. Maybe they
Yeah.
don't, because I see our viewership is very high across 4 networks. Unbelievable. And
Good,
people
good,
have
good.
not gone in out too much. Another true sign, Dr. Carr, no one's asked any questions, man. And I
Yeah,
think, to
that means
our
you're just
point
listening. So
earlier,
that's good. Well,
they're
I do. I
listening,
have
and
a
I
few.
think
I have a few
they're
questions that I can give based off of the last show. One of the questions was, sometimes women may not want to allow their partner to perform oral sex on them because they may feel as if there's a smell to it, or it's going to taste funny. So one, obviously the pineapples will help, but also women understand that women, you may want to, obviously maybe cut some of the hair down, but that pheromones that are inside your pubic hair or just inside your natural sweat is actually more of a turn on than a turn off. So don't let that stop you. Another question was, they didn't know if doing it like doggy style, they didn't want to do it. They felt as if the man would see like the cellulite, or they would look unattractive. And definitely men are not caring about cellulite. So don't worry about cellulite. Don't worry about smells. And just encourage yourself as a female to be able to say, this is my husband, this is what I want to do, and it's my right as a wife to have my husband please me, and for it to not just be a job for me to do this to him, or for him to feel like it's a job to try to please me. And then start having a courageous conversation on what and how you like it, with a no judgment clause to it.
Wow, that's powerful, Dr. Carr. Dr. Carr, thank you so much for joining us today, and we've got to have you back. And I want to tell people about Dr. Carr, the problem solver, Dr. Carr at gettheproblemsolver.com, or give us your email address, Dr. Carr,
Yeah,
so that people have that.
okay, so I'm a political and corporate advisor, so I don't have like a traditional psychology practice. I mostly work with state and national elected officials, and also obviously high profile CEOs. But you can buy the book and you go to the shop page on the problemsolver.co, not .com, and the book will be there. There's actually a pre-order right now for $19.99. Otherwise, it'll be $24.99. But it's based off of my years of psychology research for sexual psychology and marital happiness. And I think that's a great way to start without having to leave your home. You're already stuck inside for quarantine anyway. So at least make it worth your while.
Fantastic, Dr. Carr. Again, thank you for joining us. And to our viewers, thanks for tuning in earlier. And the first guy that emails me or inboxes me that they enjoyed this show and learned something can have this robe, man. I'm going to give you this robe. It's a size large. It has been a phenomenal conversation. I hope you learned something. But as we said at the top of the hour, is that in order for us to begin communication and conversations outside of our homes, we've got to begin to ensure that our communications are good inside the homes, inside our bedrooms, so that we can be fulfilled. Because if we're not fulfilled at home, how can we expect anything externally to fulfill us? So, again, this is Mike Haney, 60 Minutes in Black America. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week at 6 p.m. on 60 Minutes.
Thank you for having me.